All right, check out this crazy rig. We have the brand new Google Pixel 9 Pro XL. We have the Vivo X100 Ultra and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. I wanted to find out how well does Google's latest and greatest compete against all these other phones that are not available in the United States. There's some crazy specs out there, so how well does AI stack up to crazy hardware? Now here's an interesting thing. All of these cameras are using a 48 megapixel or higher sensor on all of the rear cameras. The Pixel primarily uses 48 megapixels, while the other ones use 50 megapixels, and actually this Vivo X100 Ultra has a 200 megapixel sensor, which we'll talk about later. Pretty crazy, but you've probably noticed this when you're taking pictures on a lot of modern day phones. You have your 1X and then you tap on the 1 and you can get to a 2X zoom. And that's happening because they're cropping into that 48 or 50 megapixel sensor to get that zoom range without losing quality. Okay, so we're in the studio, and this right here, you can kind of see some differences between the three cameras already. The Xiaomi has a more contrasty look, so you have a little bit more of darker darks, while the other two raise the shadows a bit more. This next image is of this fountain. The Pixel is exposing the image a bit brighter than the others. This is not necessarily something that indicates one is better than the other, it just indicates a taste. And here's a fun little condo flag. The Pixel tends to have a bit more of a cleaner image along the edges, while the Xiaomi goes for more of a vignetting type of look. Additionally, you can look at the shadows behind the condo sign, and you can see that they're retained a bit more on the Vivo and Xiaomi, while the Pixel tends to raise it just a little bit more. And something that's also interesting is how the condo sign on the Vivo has more color to it. There's a little bit more brown and reds to it. You can see here that the Xiaomi, it looks a little drab here. The Vivo looks the most real to life to me. I think it looks really great. The Google Pixel is making the ground, instead of brown, it makes it look kind of reddish, which is kind of interesting. And you'll notice that on the Vivo, it retains a little bit more of the sky. By the way, if you're wondering where I'm at Sony Condo right now in Santa Barbara. We're at the Ritz-Carlton. It's a great event that's put on almost every single year with a bunch of amazing creatives. We even have directors of really incredible movies. You get to learn about Sony's products, test them out, check out a new release, and then of course create and connect with other amazing people. So you'll see some of that going on along the background. And you'll get some additional commentary from me in the studio, because making content while traveling is still hard for me. There are just so many great people to talk to, you know? But here's something that makes traveling easier. The new Soundcore Space One Pro noise canceling headphones. Because of their compact size, these headphones were great for this trip's plane ride. Typically, over-ear headphones are big and take up a lot of room, but the Space One Pro has a Soundcore engineered flex curve structure that allows you to easily fold it into this tiny size and pack it in your backpack without taking up much room. When I want to use it, I unfold to go. This is so clever and so smooth. With Soundcore's most powerful 4-stage ANC noise cancellation system, super soft ear cups, an ergonomic headband, and 40 hours of battery life with ANC turned on, this is an excellent choice for noisy long flights and situations. The speaker drivers on these have extremely low total harmonic distortion, resulting in a more pure sound. I also like that you can create your own custom EQ to achieve your desired sound. If you'd like to learn more or purchase the Soundcore Space One Pro, check out the link in the description or the pinned comment. And thanks to Soundcore for sponsoring this portion of the video. So a cool thing that Sony's doing here at Condo this year is the Create Action campaign, and they give us an opportunity to choose an organization or a few organizations to donate $1,000 to each person. That goes up to $500,000. It's pretty cool. You get to put a little squishy in there and signify how much we've donated, but also look at all the colors. So that's a great test of the color science of all these cameras. Let's check it out. Now, along with color science, there are other things that you'll want to pay attention to throughout this video. Things like lens flare and the bokeh or depth of field, or the blurriness between the subject and the background or other objects. Okay, here's the first shot of this display with all three cameras. The one thing I would say is that the Pixel looks a little bit washed out compared to the other two, and the reds look like they kind of lean a little pink or magenta compared to just pure red, especially at this one at the top underneath the 200,000 below this blue area. Just looks really nuclear, a little bit much. Alternatively, the Xiaomi looks like it's a little bit more sensitive to blue, so that's something to keep in mind. I would say that the Vivo looks a little bit more even amongst all the different colors here, but we'll find out how it performs later on in the video. And here's an image here of some flowers on a table set. The thing that stands out the most is that the tablecloth looks kind of pure white, or like a good clean white already. So the white balance may be a little bit more accurate here for the Pixel, while the others, the Vivo looks a little bit more blue and the Xiaomi looks a little bit more magenta. Here you can see the difference. The Xiaomi has a little bit more of that kind of nice vibe to it. This time, the white balance is actually better. And I love how it brings out some of these warm tones and color in the palm trees in the background, while the other two look a little bit muted. Actually, the Vivo looks like it's almost gonna storm outside, which is not the case. So in this case, it does not look realistic to what it was at the time. I'm also noticing a little bit of a HDR halo around the palm trees on the Vivo. For me personally, I would pick the Xiaomi in this photo. Now we have a picture of this doggo right here. You can really see the differences again in the color temperatures and how it's processing things. The Xiaomi just looks really kind of lifeless here. It's not my favorite at all. And if we zoom in a little bit more, we can see that it's a little bit more contrasty on the Vivo on the 2x shot, while you can see a little bit more of the detail. It's a little bit raised up in the Google Pixel. So I guess if you like just seeing, you know, something that is a little bit more poppy, the Google Pixel might be a good choice. But in terms of something that looks more accurate, the Vivo is continually showing that it more likely than not hits that realistic look. Now, there are a lot of unique settings on all of these phones, of course, so I won't be able to cover everything. But one thing I wanted to point out, since we're talking about color science and styles, is that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has a Leica tuning on it, which is both vibrant or authentic. I tend to go with the authentic one, and that's going to be the bulk of what you see in this one. But if you want vibrant to look a little bit more like a traditional or typical smartphone and boost all the colors, this is what it looks like. You can see instantly that the shadows are raised and colors are popping a lot more on vibrant compared to authentic. It looks perhaps a little bit more nuclear. So it leans more towards that smartphone look where things are a little bit more oversaturated. Now here's my friend Levi, and it was kind of a sloppy shot that I was just taking in jest, but it ended up being really helpful to look at. So one thing that you'll notice here is that the Xiaomi has a really nice kind of beautiful look to it, especially in his beard. It's raising the shadows a bit on his shirt and everything else. So it's a very opinionated look, and it makes me think a little bit more of like those Fuji cameras with their recipes and stuff. You just kind of take a picture and it's good to go. It's not something that you would use if you want to edit all the images and stuff, but it works really well for street shooters, which is why it seems to work really nicely on skin tones rather than on the little pup that we looked at earlier. This is my friend Brandon Washington, who knew exactly what the assignment was. We can see here that the Pixel, it just looks really great on the skin tones. He even said that he absolutely loved it. The skin tones on the Vivo were not his favorite. It was actually his least favorite here. And then finally have this nighttime shot here. You can see, again, the Pixel raises some of the shadows and the reds in the brick on the ground, while the Xiaomi really adds a lot of contrast and depth to the ground. And we also see on the Xiaomi that there's way more contrast, so the background is completely, it's just blacked out. While you can see a little bit of it in the Vivo and on the Google Pixel, but the Vivo looks a little bit more natural, while the Google Pixel has more of that kind of green yellowy cast to the background. But here, it's interesting. I love the vibe and feel of the Xiaomi over the other two, even though the other two are more accurate. There's just something, that kind of warmth that adds to it. I don't know how to describe it, but it looks nice. Even the detail on his beard, his scruff looks really awesome in it. The Pixel, it looks very clean and more clinical, a little bit more flat, but everything's brought up. Now you really see the difference between these different color sciences and how it processes everything in this shot here with some models that were here. So first of all, the Google Pixel, it's raising up everything. So it actually looks kind of like it's been put through a weird filter and it looks flat. You'll notice here that the Vivo, it looks more natural, probably true to the actual scenario and scene. And so this is a really great starting point if you want to edit it. Now, something I want to point out is if you really zoom in at the dark area of whatever thing she's wearing, on the Pixel, you'll see a whole bunch of weird fragments, and it's kind of like a rainbow artifact going across it. It looks really smudgy and kind of messy. Alternatively, if you look at the Xiaomi, it's really clean, but definitely quite a bit darker because it's going for that contrasty look. And then on the Vivo, you'll notice here that it is by far the cleanest of all of them. You still see some of the detail of all the little fuzzes on her garment or whatever you call that thing, but there's no noise there. It looks the most realistic. It looks amazing in my opinion. So another thing that you'll want to keep in mind as you look at these photos and videos is the lens flare. What's interesting about Vivo is it has a partnership with Zeiss, which means it has a coating on the actual lens, which helps reduce lens flare. And you'll notice here on the Google Pixel and on the Xiaomi, you'll see a lot of these little orbs all over the place. But I'll point out that the Vivo in this clip right here does look a bit washed out and not as detailed. So, you know, you have some pros and cons there, but in terms of the actual quality, it's not my my favorite. Another thing you'll want to keep in mind throughout the video is bokeh, or that depth of field between the subject and the background. So here we have this cool typewriter, and you can notice here that the depth of field on the Vivo seems to be a bit more than what you see on both the Google Pixel and the Xiaomi. And you'll notice that the quality of bokeh on it looks a little bit more pleasing. It looks a little bit more like smooth and creamy. Here's my friend Jason Vong. The trees on the Vivo look a little bit more smeared out. So of all of them, I actually like the Google Pixel's processing of all the foliage in the background. So if you look at this horse here, you can see that there's not a dramatic difference between all of them. The Vivo does have, you know, some additional bokeh in the background, but once we kick into the telephoto, we can really start seeing the difference in bokeh, or the depth of field between all of them, with the Pixel really falling behind all of them. And you can see that the Vivo and Xiaomi really has some nice depth of field going on. So you know how all these phones have portrait mode built into it? That's all artificial to create, well, a portrait mode looking shot. But a lot of them have these really great telephoto lenses on them now, and that's the traditional way of getting a telephoto or portrait shot. And I want to compare the difference between artificial intelligence with the artificial blurry background, or bokeh, or using it the proper way with a telephoto lens. So here we have an artificial portrait mode, and amongst all of them, I really like this Vivo one a lot. It looks really beautiful and smooth. There's still some contrast and saturation in the background. The Google Pixel looks really washed out in comparison. You can also see the cutout around his hair on the Vivo and the Xiaomi is really great, while on the Pixel, it's kind of smudgy, kind of haze around his hair. And then here is a portrait mode shot with the actual telephoto lens. So this is not using artificial portrait mode. I usually always say that real portrait mode is the way to go and artificial portrait mode sucks and we should let it die. I think I'm wrong. These shots are fine, but they just don't pop like the artificial portrait mode. So I guess maybe we're still gonna use that for a while. Okay, let's talk about the telephoto. Now we have some establishing shots right here to give you an idea. We have this 1x wide angle shot here. Now, if you go into the next option, that's not the 2x punch in, you'll notice that the Vivo is wider than the Google Pixel and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. That's because the next step is 3.7x rather than 5x like what the Google Pixel and the Xiaomi have. Now when we go to a 10x, the Vivo is the one that has a native 10x zoom range compared to the other ones. This is where the telephoto really starts to shine through. We can see here that the Vivo has more depth of field amongst all of them naturally, and it looks like the Pixel was back focusing, so it did not focus on the actual head of the horse but his neck. And then if we zoom in even more, we can see the difference not only of the bokeh but that color science as well. You get a more redder, warm tone on the Pixel. You get that more contrasty opinion look on the Xiaomi, and then you get that more true to life look on the Vivo. You can see here at the 10x here, the Xiaomi this time is the one that's back focusing, so the dog is not in focus, and the Google Pixel is just raising the brightness on everything, which can be nice if you want to see the actual subject of it, but you can see that the highlights are really kind of blown out as well, while the Vivo again is more true to life. Here on this tree, you'll see that there's a lot of detail. The Pixel again is really raising a lot of the shadows and sharpening everything else and kind of washing out all the dirt. If we zoom in even more, we can see the same thing that I mentioned before really being emphasized. The Vivo maintains that detail while looking organic. Something to really look for in the background are those trees, and you can see how the trees look really beautiful and natural on the Vivo, while on the Pixel it looks digital and sharp, and even the Vivo looks that way. And then here's an interesting thing. Sony has partnered with the NFL as their technology partner. So we had the Vince Lombardi trophy here, and you can see the difference between all of them there. I think that the Pixel, it's definitely adding a lot of detail to it. It looks nice for a social media shot, but it's not as realistic. I think the Vivo looks the cleanest, especially on the emblem, the NFL emblem. It looks really nice and smooth. Now this example of photos is something that I walked around and showed pretty much everybody at Sony Condo, and it made people just kind of lose their minds and want to know what phone I was using to take these photos. It really sealed the deal on this phone being the phone with the wow factor throughout the whole entire event. At Sony Condo, they announced the new 85mm G Master lens, and here's a shot of Neil opening the event. So we can see here very easily and quickly here that the Pixel is just not cutting it. Here's the part that gets really interesting. This is not the part that you should be blown away by. See, the Vivo has this insane feature called stage mode. So you don't just have a 10x telephoto, you have a 20x telephoto. This is absolutely outrageous. Look at how good this image is up close at 20x compared to the other two. And my goodness, this shot here really makes Neil look like he's pulling off his Steve Jobs era. It's just truly astounding that you have something like that in your pocket on your phone. So that's all great and all in a well-lit environment, but what about a more complicated performance-like environment like this DJ here? So we're at a 10x zoom range here, and you can see that the Xiaomi is having a little bit of an issue in terms of focusing, a little bit blurred out. The Google Pixel, there's a lot of noise there, just really grainy and kind of washed out, while the Vivo still maintains a lot of detail and looks really great. And of course, you have that 20x zoom range as well, and it still looks pretty decent. I would say it looks better than the Google Pixel. It's not great, but it's not that bad. All right, since we're in Santa Barbara, there's palm trees here. And one of the greatest things for testing out cameras is actually a palm tree. And the reason for that is because of all the little details in the leaves. And it can really show all the sharpening that's going on if it looks natural or artificial. So check it out. Here we can see that all the palm trees do not have that really weird kind of fringing artificial look to all of it. But I will say that the Vivo has a little bit of that HDR haloing around the palm tree. You see that very much on the 2X, but up close here, you don't see as much of an issue there. And I would say that the Google Pixel looks the most artificial amongst all of them, with a ton of over sharpening from all that detail. For macro shots, you can see here that all of them are pretty decent, but I would say the Vivo seems to be getting more detail. You can see the texture on the keys a bit better, and it also maintains some of that nice contrast and saturation. One thing that you'll probably notice is that the Xiaomi has a wider field of view. The Xiaomi has an ultra wide that has 122 degrees, while the Pixel has 121 degrees, and the Vivo has the most narrowest field of view of 116. You can definitely see that amongst all of these here. You can especially notice it here on this shot of the Afeela, the car that's made in partnership between Sony and Honda here. You can see how much wider everything looks, but you also have a little bit more distortion. As for the selfie camera, you got to get your shots with some awesome people. Here's Becca, who just became a solo creator after she left The Verge. One thing to kind of keep in mind is that you want to avoid having the beauty mode turned on, which unfortunately I had turned on for the Xiaomi. So we look a little bit extra smeared here. Another thing that I noticed is that the Xiaomi and Pixel have a wider angle option for the selfie camera, while the Vivo only has one option. Here's a shot of me with my friend Donna. We do not have beauty mode on anymore, and you're able to get that wider shot as well. Okay, now let's figure out how well the front-facing camera looks like at night. Here in these nighttime shots, the Vivo looks like it's more illuminated, but it also looks pretty washed out and not that great. I would say the Pixel looks a bit better, but there is a wider angle version as well, and the Pixel still looks better. That's one thing that is unfortunately kind of common on a lot of these Chinese phones. The front-facing camera is not always the best, but it looks like Xiaomi has been stepping it up recently. All right, we're at this really cool course right now where they have polo going on right now. And it's owned by the world's best polo player in the world, who has trained princes and kings and stuff like that. So it's pretty wild. But yeah, he owns this whole entire piece of land. Oh my gosh. And they're just playing with it. But we're gonna get some video footage of this and a telephoto to see how well it performs in moving situations, including the stabilization. That's wild. The one thing that I noticed the most between all of them on telephoto for video is that the Google Pixel has a lot of stabilization issues. It's really choppy and jumpy depending on what you're doing. Once you get going in a specific direction and you maintain that direction, it's really smooth. But the moment that you change direction, it's gonna jump around quite a bit. In comparison, both the Vivo and the Xiaomi look way better, with the Vivo really coming out ahead the most because it has this gimbal-like stabilization. On the Google Pixel, you do have the option of processing it. You can upload it and Google will smooth it out and more, but that's an extra step and you have to wait and all that stuff. It's pretty neat that the Vivo and even the Xiaomi, more so than the Pixel, is able to stabilize it, and it's good right out of the bat. Here's a running test with all three of them. You can really see that jumpiness between the Google Pixel and the rest. The Xiaomi is a lot better than it, but it's still a bit jumpy, and again, the Vivo is the best. Here's a shot of Josh again on the one wheel, and you'll see that the Google Pixel has more detail than the the other two. So there's that sharpening going on there. It's a little bit brighter, more saturated as well, but I do like the way that the Vivo looks in terms of its natural look. Even though the Google Pixel has way more detail, if you pause the video while Josh is moving around on the one wheel, the image is actually really blurry. In comparison, the Vivo and the Xiaomi has way more detail retained even while moving around. So my friend Lee saw my crazy rig and had to check it out for himself. So here are some of his thoughts on the video quality.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Like and subscribe. This comparison is gonna blow your socks off. He will never use this clip. Levi on for life.
What if I actually include this? Dude, it's crazy.
How is the low light mode?
Yeah, well, you know, you have your Xiaomi and then you have your Vivo, and these have larger sensors, so ideally it would be better in lower light conditions, wouldn't it?
This one is doing like some AI processing stuff that makes it look like you're denoised in plastic. This one looks the best.
Oh, interesting.
That's
so
my...
the Xiaomi looks the best.
I think the Xiaomi looks the best.
How about that?
The Pixel looks the worst.
Another thing to point out with stabilization is when you have bumps, does it make the whole image look all blurry and jittery? It looks like on the Vivo, it's the only one that looks like it didn't have a ton of artifacts when you hopped around. And on this shot, it looks like the Afila internal lighting, it looks way better and more natural on the Vivo. You can see that change color temperature back. For these horses, you can see again, the Xiaomi just doesn't seem to have that nice look to it for video. It looks way better for photo in my opinion. The Google Pixel has really come a long way and it looks a lot better than it has in the past, but I still feel like the Vivo looks the most natural and it has the most natural movement. Now on this clip, the Vivo has way more detail and exposure on the grass compared to the rest of them, and while zoomed in, it looks like it has way more detail than the rest. For a live performance, video is not as clear cut or as easy to estimate as before. The Vivo and Xiaomi do not look as good as the Pixel, which seems to expose a little bit better, has more detail. It's obviously sharpening the video quite a bit more, so you see a ton of noise on it, but you actually see things a little bit more. He doesn't look like a big old smudged up blur. I would personally pick the Google Pixel for this. Again, we'll see that the Google Pixel, in my opinion, pulls ahead here for detail in this low light shot. The Vivo and the Xiaomi look quite a bit blurry and smudgy in comparison. So again, you get a lot of noise. And then here is the Afila car in this blue lit little tunnel here. And you can see that the Google Pixel exposes things a bit darker than the other ones, but I'd love to know what you notice here. Now here are a set of photos that are pretty interesting. It has a lot to do with the science of the camera sensor built into it, and it has to do with its sensitivity to blue or red, with the color science. And with these images right here, you can really see that come to life. The Xiaomi and the Google Pixel are having a lot of issues, especially the Xiaomi with something called blue clipping. And that means that the blue is so sensitive that it blows out the sensor and things just look really bad. The Vivo though looks incredible. It's clearly the best shot, exposes everything extremely well, and you can even see the red within the cabin with incredible detail. You can see the lights in the sky behind it, and it just looks so good. So the Vivo really knocked it out of the park here. And if we look at the other sensors, which may have a different sensitivity to light compared to the main sensor, we can see that it looks like this. So it's a little bit better actually compared to the main camera, but we can also see how it's able to let in more light on the Vivo and Xiaomi compared to the Google Pixel, which has smaller sensors. At nighttime photo for performance, the Vivo still comes out ahead. It has that stage mode, so it's specifically tuned to perform extremely well for these environments. Here's how all the lenses look like with the night mode or night sight, whatever they want to call it on each one, at each and every focal range here, from wide angle all the way to telephoto. I don't really like the Xiaomi for any of these shots. I would say that the Pixel is solid, but the Vivo as a whole really shines for me in terms of looking the most natural. In the shot here of the Fila car at night, you can see that the Zeiss coating is really helping out quite a bit for reducing lens flare. Now, while all of these have a night mode type of night sight feature, the Google Pixel is the only one where you have to manually go into that setting. So here's a comparison of the Google Pixel when you take a picture without night sight and then with night sight at both wide and then ultra wide. And here's some shots that I took walking back to my room. You can see that the wide on the Pixel looks a bit better in my opinion in terms of exposure of everything. They all look pretty good. It really comes down to if you want something that's really brightly lit and HDR or something that looks a little bit more natural. Pixel. Amongst all of the cameras in night mode, I've noticed that the Vivo tends to look the best and most natural to me. The Xiaomi tends to have some issues in terms of its color, as well as the Google Pixel at times. Now, while the Google Pixel talks a lot about AI in its processing, the reality is that all of these cameras use AI. If you take a picture, you'll notice that it has a moment where it lags and then it processes everything. You can see it go from the image from before into the process image, and they're all doing that. What's interesting is that the Vivo is doing a lot of processing, but it looks natural still. While the Google Pixel, when it's processing things, it looks like it's over processing things quite a bit, in my opinion. I really do wish that the Google Pixel could have larger sensors and hardware like you can see on the Vivo and Xiaomi, and then scale back on some of that processing so it doesn't go so heavy-handed. I think it can make it really amazing. The Pixel does have some additional features like the super res zoom, which I did put on this photo of Neil, and it did not make it look that much better in my opinion. And then an add me feature, which just didn't seem to work. I don't know what happened, but it seems like you have to have the perfect environment to make it work. So here are my thoughts between all of them. The Google Pixel as a whole really does seem like it's falling behind by generations. Part of the reason why I wanted to make this video is to show the crazy things that we don't get to experience in the United States by having the options of only Apple, Samsung, and Google. And that's because we don't know any better. We don't know the cool things that are going on overseas where they iterate their phones on a 6-month cycle, which is crazy because we iterate on a one year cycle. So what would it look like if all of us knew what crazy stuff was happening overseas and we started asking more from Google, Apple, and Samsung? It would be pretty incredible because they're doing some pretty insane stuff. So hopefully this video opens your eyes to some of the options that we don't have available so that we can advocate for more. And hopefully I can help out with that by voicing my concerns to the brands. So let's ask for more because man, these phones are crazy now. And the longer that Apple, Google, and Samsung only iterate once a year and drag their feet, the more they're going to fall behind. Always know that I agree that a phone is not just the camera, it's everything else combined. And the Google Pixel is an amazing phone because of its whole entire package. But dang it, it'd be really awesome if we had an insane camera that lives up to the reputation of the Google Pixel, because I think the Google Pixel is not the best camera anymore. Sorry. If you want to know which one I would pick as my camera of choice, easily the Vivo X100. Now, if you'd like to pick up any of these phones, they'll be linked down below in the description. Just keep in mind that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is a global model that's available, and the Vivo X100 Ultra is China only, so you'll have to flash on Google Play and all that other stuff. Kind of a pain in the butt. Makes sense why people don't want to buy it from the United States because of that, but still, it doesn't change the fact that this video is to show what we are missing out on. But let me know what your thoughts are. What would you like to see in phones that are centered and focused on the United States? Let me know in the comments and in the This Is Tech Today Discord chat server. There's a link in the description for that. Thanks for watching This Is Tech Today. Until next time.